I believe that every adult problem is an unresolved child problem. I believe it with all my heart because
Welcome back to the Julian J. Franco Show, a show where I bring to you people who I find to be genuine, not only in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. And Hope Carpenter is, you know what? I think she's a definition of what being vulnerable is, because so many people talk about, oh, you have to be vulnerable and vulnerable shows strength and blah, blah, blah. But this person in the public eye literally just shared it all, where everybody else will hide their scars and hide their mistakes. She actually wrote a book about, one of her biggest mistakes and how she felt that God just used that as one of the biggest testimonies to date. So, Hope Carpenter, she's a co-pastor of one of the nation's largest megachurches, Redemption Church. And when people thought about who she was just basically the perfect supportive wife, the perfect mother, the devoted worship leader. And just my whole point is, from the outside looking in, you think, oh my gosh, she's incredible. So Hope, let's just start off with saying, why are you so vulnerable? Let's start it there.
Wow. Well, I lived a lot of my life wearing a mask and just trying to present perfect, thinking that I had to be what this group of people wanted me to be. The church world in itself, that's a tough load to bear, just being inside that fishbowl and so many opinions. And you can never live up to people's opinion. You just cannot, no matter what place in the world you are. If you're a media host, if you're a television personality, if you're a mom, if you're a school teacher, whoever you are, we're never called to live up to people's opinion. The only opinion is God's opinion of us, and we have to be who He created us to be. He's our creator. He made us, He formed us, He fashioned us. And the only reason we are placed here on this earth is to bring glory to Him and to fulfill the purpose He has for us. And so I lived in that fishbowl of performing and trying, and it about crushed me. It literally did crush me. And, my journey is all in the book, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it today. But, I lived a long time miserable, in anxiety, in PTSD, in shame, because my insides were not matching my outsides. That's what we call congruency. So I was not congruent. And so I had no peace. I had no joy. And then when my life fell apart on a public stage, all over the world for people to see, man, we were the number 3 sad story in America in 2013. And shame on the Christian world for that. We are not called to kick our brothers when we're down, and we're supposed to wrap our arms around them and love them back to life. And that just did not happen for me and my husband. And that's why I'm vulnerable now, is because there's so many hurting people in the world. And I know what it feels like to be at the lowest point. I know what it feels like to have lost everything. I know what it feels like to everybody that you have in your cell phone, when the dirt hits the fan, you look at your cell phone and you don't have anybody to call. And I was determined that day. I said, you know what? I'm going to share my junk. I'm going to share my story. If I can just embrace people all over the world, if it has to be virtually, if that's the way it can get them the furthest, I'm going to do it so that people say, there's hope, not just this hope, there's hope for me. That's why I'm vulnerable.
You have a perfect reason for doing what you do. And like I said at the very start of the show, Hope, there's a lot of people who speak on being vulnerable, but literally there is no better example that I can think of, at least in our generation, of somebody who just went through so much, and all the things that you went through are literally, there's no gauge on shame or guilt or whatnot, but you are at a very high threshold for what you went through. So the fact that you can be vulnerable with stuff that is just so sensitive, it is wild. But one thing that I love that you said is, when you were about 35 years old, I can't do this anymore. I can't perform. I can't please. I can't be perfect. And I think we all live in this in that mindset of just like, I'm tired of doing what everybody expects me to be. But like I said, with you, it's even harder because when it comes to the church world, if people think politics in the US is something, imagine politics within the church world. That is just a whole nother ball game. So the fact,
at least,
you know what I mean?
At least in politics, nobody expects you to talk right, act right, do right. You know, they're like, oh, they're politicians. They don't do any of that right. But in the Christian world, you know, we're supposed to be perfect, right? We're not supposed to have a bad day. We're not supposed to say an ugly word. We're not supposed to, you know, let people down because we're superhuman. But man, I did it.
You did it, but the fact that you did it and you're full circle now, at least from the way I'm looking at it. And I hope that you feel this way too. So I don't want to speak for you. I want you to share, you know, where you stand when it comes to all of this. But one thing that I really do enjoy about you, because with my line of work is just studying human behavior. And a lot of us as adults, we look at each other and we go, oh, well, Hope is whatever. She's 25 years old. So that means her childish tendencies are evaporated, right? They no longer exist. But you do such a good job of saying, no, look at what happened in your childhood and look at those formidable years. And let's talk about that. Let's deal with that. And you talk about something. And again, I just like a lot of what you say. That's why you're also an author, because you have a gift with words. But you said something about, you know, my whole house was like, you know, a temperature of perfectionism, right? Like that's where it was set, and anything beneath that, you were wrong. So speak a little bit about just your upbringing and what destructive patterns you felt that brought to your adult life.
Absolutely. I believe that every adult problem is an unresolved child problem. I believe it with all my heart, because those are our formative years. That's where our brain's forming. And our brain, you know, let me tell you this. This is one of the biggest aha moments I've ever had, is when I realized, and you know it from biology class in the 10th grade, but when I finally come to understand that our brain is an organ, it's just an organ. And it can be affected by stress and trauma and abuse, just like our heart can, just like our bowels can, just like our stomach can. It's being all the information that has been put in there or did not get put in there when we were being trained and groomed and growing up, and especially in the first 3 years of our life, what we did or did not get sets the course and the pattern for our life. Had no idea. Nobody talks about this. Nobody ever addressed mental health. Nobody addressed any of this growing up, and especially not in the church. Because what the church I grew up in was, you come to the altar and it all happens at the altar and you get up changed. And listen, I'm all for altar experiences. I've seen miracles. I literally have seen them with my eyes at altar experiences. People coming down drunk, coming in the church drunk, go to the altar, people pray for them, and they're completely sober. I've seen miracles. I've seen tumors fall off people's neck. I really have. Just crazy things I've seen. But when it comes to this, when it comes to our brain, when it comes to our mind, those are patterns that have been taught for years and years and years and years. And our brain automatically responds. Our brain automatically does things. So it takes years and a lot of hard work to retrain our thinking, to retrain our brain. The Bible talks so much about the mind and where to focus it and what to think on. And so, you know, I tell people all the time, we're a 3-part being: body, soul, and spirit. We got to take care of all of it. We can't just go to the physical doctor once a year or go get our teeth cleaned twice a year. We need to get that brain and that mind checked on a regular basis. And it doesn't mean you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It just means that you're taking care of your whole body, soul, and spirit. So yeah, the things that happen growing up affect us. And I didn't know it. I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of abuse, physical and emotional. I was raped when I was 15 years old, never spoke of it till I was in my mid-20s. Shame. I was afraid I would get in trouble if I went home and told my parents that. because the climate was such perfection. So when I left home at 18 years old, went to Bible college, I was a music major, fell in love with my husband today. He was the cutest thing running down that basketball court with that long blonde mullet just blowing in the wind. And, I thought when we got married and I changed my last name and I changed my address, that everything changed, that everything started over. And that is not true. I took all that trauma. I took all those ways of thinking. I took all of those patterns into my adulthood. And all of my relationships were formed out of that old way of thinking, that old pattern, all of that anxiety, all of that PTSD from abuse. Had no idea that it needed to be dealt with. And listen, at 35 years old, living in a great home with a wonderful husband, with amazing people in my life fell apart. I had an emotional breakdown at 35 years old because it looked like a beautiful house from the outside. The paint looked good. The wallpaper matched my curtains. I mean, the couch looked great, but my foundation was cracked. And I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what it looks like from the outside. If what's behind the wall, if the plumbing's not connected, if the wiring electrically is mixed up, eventually that beautiful house is going to start to have problems. And that is what happened to me.
And I remember you saying that at one point you just said, you know what? I'm going to start doing what I want to do, right? Forget what the church expects from me, what my friends expect from me, what just and again, coming from a mega church, and as your husband says, hey, I don't like to call it mega church. It's just a really large church in a small town. The level of expectancy that comes from outsiders, people who don't even know you, right? They know your sermons, they know about your public facing life, but it's very taxing. And even like you said, the difference between a politician and somebody who is a public figure in the church world is people just expect you to be perfect. They expect you, oh, that's Hope Carpenter. What? She's wearing that? She's doing this? She said, it's just like, come on. Like, I'm also still a human at that point. But one thing that I love that you share openly is like, you know what? You got to the point that you said, the heck with it. And I believe you went near a body of water. You got yourself a 6-pack. You put on a bathing suit, a two-piece,
a little one,
right? And not because for you to be in the church world, you're supposed to wear a curtain as a bathing suit.
Right.
You're supposed to block exactly everything. So
yeah.
And then I also like to connect that to the part where you talk about having, enemy traffic in your head. And one of the red flags is when you go, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. Right. Or when you start to think about, well, what do I want? That's one of the red flags. So just talk to me about that. How can we minimize the enemy traffic in our head and also minimize that? Well, you know what? I'm just going to do it because I feel it. So what?
Yeah.
So how do we minimize that attitude?
Well, I think that this is, I'm probably going to come against like this, some huge mindsets listening, because this day and age is, the whole philosophy is do you. Be you, girl. Do you, be yourself. Can't nobody tell me what to do, and be your own man, be your own woman. And for me personally, and I can't speak for anybody else, but if you bear the name Christian, if you call yourself a Christian, the whole mantra of the Christian life is dying to self. And, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to hear it. We don't want anybody preaching it from the pulpit. We want these feel-good messages, where we can drink our coffee and enjoy a good feel-good message in church. And we don't want to be confronted. But when we start saying, what about me? What about what I want? What about what I like? What about what I desire? Really, it's not about us. Jesus said to get life, you got to lose it. You have to lose it. He says, you got to take up your cross daily and follow me. Nothing in life especially in the Christian life, is going to be easy. We're going to be attacked always. And our fleshly self is going to want to rise up, and our pride's going to want to rise up, and we want to have our right to say what we feel and think and tell everybody on social media off. And no. That's what I did in 2004. I had just been living, performing for people, my parents, school, my husband, the church world. And this is what happened. I have learned now after tons of counseling that what I was going through really was called individuation. It's what we're supposed to be able to go through at 12, 13, 14, 15 in the confines of our own home, of our parents' oversight, who have let the rope loose a little bit, who lets you make some decisions, learn some lessons on your own, burn your fingers on the stove, so to speak. But I never had that opportunity. I wasn't allowed to wear a bathing suit. I wasn't allowed to go to the dances or the sock hops or dates and things like that. And so I was just having to live and do and believe what everybody around me was telling me was true and right. So at 35, I said, I got to figure this out on my own. And if you do it in the right time frame, you do it gracefully. If you do it outside of the right time frame, it's usually going to be a disaster. And the world calls that a midlife crisis. But really what it is you're individuating.
There is nothing more to be said after that. That is such a good point. Wow. What I love the most about what you said is we were supposed to do this at 11, 12, 13.
Yeah.
But that's the point where the handcuffs are fastened the tightest.
Yeah.
And then you talk about midlife crisis, because now is when you're finally free enough and you have that pent up anger and aggression and the shame and the guilt where you're like, wait, my whole way of life isn't working until now. So I got to do something and shift it so drastically. And it could be getting beers, listening to this, wearing that,
going to the bars. That's the 40-year-old woman with the mini skirt. And everybody looks at her like, what does she have that on for? She shouldn't be wearing that. Exactly. But she should have been able to choose to wear that at 16.
I am literally in awe. And this is fantastic. So if you guys are already listening in and just amazed and shocked with just the way she's able to articulate herself, the most beautiful disaster, how God makes miracles out of your mistakes. Now, this is something that it's so unique because your story is unique. And especially when, like I said, and I'm going to keep honing in on this because it's something for somebody to be vulnerable when nobody knows them, right? And, they work at the grocery store and they're trying to be vulnerable about how they maybe stole from the register or something like that. And I'm not devaluating that.
Right.
But I'm also not trying to be dismissive of Hope Carpenter's story. You know what I mean? Because I think it's huge. And even with your husband too, the way how supportive he's been as well. And one thing that I love.
He's a trooper.
He is a trooper. One thing that I love that he said, was he doesn't love a lot. He loves few, but he loves hard, and that's one person that I really do just resonate with, because that's how I am too. Like, I don't have a million friends, but the 5 friends that I have, they know I have their back forever.
Yeah.
And one thing that Ron said that I just wanted you to piggyback off, because you didn't really comment on this, but he says you have to allow someone to over scrutinize you in the area in which you violated them. Now, wow. This was something when I heard that I went, ooh, I love it. I agree fully. And then my compassionate pants came on and I said, Hope, but isn't that exhausting, right? Like, it wouldn't, well, are you doing this again? Where were you? Wouldn't that make somebody feel like, you know what? You keep telling me that, you keep saying that, and I'm already getting punished for a crime I didn't commit. I might as well commit it. I wanted to hear what your thoughts on that.
Listen, that was a tough time. It was really tough. And there is a huge difference between forgiveness and trust. You can choose to forgive someone, and he did. He chose to forgive me, but man, that rebuilding trust. And I wrote a whole chapter in the book about how to rebuild trust. Most of us want to say, I said I'm sorry. Come on, I already said I'm sorry. But that is not the process of rebuilding trust, and being willing to be over scrutinized is part of it. Man, it was tough. And especially I'm a grown woman having to ask permission to go somewhere or not have a cell phone. Listen, when we separated, I didn't have a vehicle for 2 years. He took my vehicle. You know why? Because I was willing, because I was so sorry and I was so repentant that I was willing to do whatever it took. And that is why relationships don't go the distance. That is why when people do find themselves in infidelity, they end up getting a divorce, because they are not willing to put in the work that it takes to rebuild the trust. Because listen, it takes a second to lose trust, but it takes a lifetime to rebuild it. And I didn't have a cell phone for 3 years. And I was willing not to until he felt like he could trust me with one, because I loved him so much. And I was so sorry for how I had hurt him. Listen, when we separated in 2013, I was fired. I'm the co-founder of the church. I was fired. I had no health insurance. I was taken off all of the paperwork in the church that says I was the co-founder, the vice president. I had no car. I had no income. I was cut off from all credit cards. And people listening might say, well, man, that's harsh and that's cruel. But listen, I had violated him so deeply. And this had been going on underground off and on for 9 years. And I remember in the process of our restoration, it had probably been 2 years that we had reconciled, and we were really fighting to survive and fighting to rebuild trust. And it was still so raw. I remember one time we got into an argument, and I said, Ron, it's been 2 years. Why are you still whatever? And he looked at me and he said, your process was 9 years. He said, you at least ought to give me that amount of time to heal. Whoa, that was deep. And do you know what? I had to swallow hard, and I had to say, if that's how long it takes, I love you that much.
Hope Carpenter, I feel like we're on Oprah right now. This is just incredible. Now, to go into, because I'm sure there's a lot of people, because we like to specialize on relationships here, because there is nothing more important than that, right? It's just
That's
like
right.
Without the right.
That's what life is.
That's all life is, and we get too caught up in, status and
Right.
this and that, and all of that is fine. It's great. It makes life a bit easier when you have more. But just like with Pastor Denise Boggs, like the way you were able to lean in and, just get restored and have that was fantastic. But for people who are listening now, and they may be looking at somebody else, they're in a committed relationship, right? And they may start, well, Hope, there's this cute girl or there's this cute guy, and we're not really doing anything. I'm just extra friendly. And you just see that they're kind of opening the door to like, well, if something happens, but nothing's happening. What would you tell them? And I don't even know how to ask this question without being just plain, straightforward. But sometimes when you ask, like, how do you stop somebody from cheating or opening the door to themselves when they're in a committed relationship? A lot of people stop listening, Hope, because they're like, well, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not doing that. I'm just being friendly with somebody. So there's a difference between flirting and cheating, right? A lot of people are, and even when I talk to couples, they have that guard up,
right?
So based off that slippery slope, what's just some tips or something that people should be dwelling on if they see themselves in that type of predicament?
Well, number one, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Where there's smoke, there's fire. But to me, let me just back up and say this. All of that is fruit. All of that is the affair, drug abuse. Any of those things are just fruit. And where there's fruit, there's always a root. So we can talk about the fruit all day long, but the main question is, why are you doing what you're doing? There's always a why. So to me, like my husband, a man is going to take, if their wife is unfaithful, they're going to focus on the affair. They're going to focus on the sex, because a man, that just violates their manhood. And truthfully, I've done so much research, so much counseling. It's not even about the sex. It's not even about that. There's always a reason. There's a void on the inside of someone that would make them do that anyway. It's not about the other person. It is a void on the inside. It's those emotional needs that every one of us have that did or did not get filled, like we talked about before, in childhood. Write a whole chapter in the book about this. There's 10 emotional needs that every one of us have to have filled by our parents in our formative years. And if they're not filled, we go into adulthood with longings. We're longing to be appreciated. We're longing to be affirmed. We're longing for security. And the Bible says in Psalm 107, only Jesus can satisfy the longings of our soul. What is our soul? It's our mind, our will, and our emotions. So it's those emotional needs that we think a man's going to feel, that we think another woman's going to feel, that we think a new car is going to feel, or if we can live in this neighborhood, if I can carry this pocketbook. None of those things can fill. They only make us hungry for more, because it's the fake food. It's the fake stuff. And until you get the real stuff, until you get a hold of the love of God, you will go the rest of your life longing, and nothing can fill it. So there's always a why. There's always, why are you wanting to talk to another man when you got a man sitting right here beside you? Why are you wanting to have women friends on Instagram and you're a married man? It's always a why. It's because you have emotional needs that are not met. And you think that this person that you're married to, or this person you're in a committed relationship, well, they're not meeting my needs. They're not supposed to. Only Jesus can satisfy the longings in your soul.
Wow, this is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And listen, everybody right now, literally, I don't like when people pause the podcast ever, but just pause it right now. And Hope, can people get your book on Amazon?
Absolutely.
Okay. What's your preferred method?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, but they can go to hopecarpenter.com. Mm-hmm. They can go to Amazon. They can go to barnesandnoble.com, Target. It's anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold. The Most Beautiful Disaster, and How God Makes Miracles Out of Your Mistakes. And this is just something that I believe everybody can benefit from. Like, who's not going to be able to benefit from this book? Like, stop it. If you think, well, I haven't made a mistake, or I'm not this, I'm not that.
Just
you're
keep
kidding
living.
yourself. Yeah, just keep living. Or you know what? How about you install that mirror that you have in the closet? That's what you have to do. So I'm just so proud of you. And again, I just feel it to be so genuine, and seeing you and your husband come together throughout all the bull crap. And here's one question before we go into our final segment. How were you able to click publish? Obviously, you don't publish overnight. This is something you think about, and during your whole reflection period, you said, you know what? I'm going to be as public as I want to be about this. How do you do that? Hope, people can't even go outside wearing a new shirt because they're like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? How does it make me look? Or they want a new hairstyle, Hope, but they can't do it because their friends are probably going to think they're doing too much or they're not doing enough. What was it in you that said, you know what? No filter. You guys want it? Here it goes. How do you have that ability?
Honestly, it's what I was just talking about. I really, truly got really deep, deep, deep inner healing. And it never stops, honestly. Once you start pursuing healing, it's a lifelong journey because, you're going to need more healing next week when this person ticks you off. And you're going to need more healing the next week when somebody else stabs you in the back. It's a lifelong journey of healing. But there is one time that you decide, you know what? I am sick of this version of me. This version of me is not who God created me to be. This one I'm living right now is fake. It's a people pleaser. I have no joy. I have no, I live in anxiety. Today, you know what? After the healing I've been through, and it took a long time, it was not quick. Let me warn the listeners, it's not quick and it is not easy and it will cost you something. It will always cost you something. It'll usually cost you people, places, and things. There are going to be people you're going to have to X out of your life. There are going to be places you can't go anymore. There are going to be things you cannot do. If you really want to get on the road to recovery and healing and getting to such a place in God where nobody else's opinion matters. And it took a while. This all started, this recovery for me was in 2013. And here we are in 2021. And so my book didn't come out till this year. I started writing it 2 years ago. And we knew that I would eventually write a book. But, I wanted to make sure that my husband was good, that my family was good, that I was good. Because no matter what you do, how well you try to live and how good you try to be, you still going to have haters. You're still going to have people say ugly things. And, I just needed to make sure that I was in a good, healthy mental space to be able to handle it. And, people going to say what they're going to say, but, you just got to keep on living and you got to make sure you're at a good place where you can pursue healing and you can get down to the real whys of why you are who you are right now. And be willing to take them all out and put them on the table and look at them and say, oh, I got to deal with that. Oh, I got to deal with that. Oh, I was hurt when I was 12. I was hurt when I was 15. That divorce really messed me up. I had an abortion, whatever yours is. But you got to do the hard work so that you can stand really firm in who you are in Christ and you can go forward using your life and using your trials and using all your junk for his glory and the salvation of many. So you can take other people and pull them into the light with you.
Fully agreed. And just one thing I want to piggyback off of when you talk about, being a people pleaser and wanting to be perfect. And, when somebody, prompts you with a question, you lie right away because you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to make a mistake. If you can summarize, why is it so easy for people to live their lives wanting to blend in and please everybody and not have any confrontation, not be any trouble? Why is it so easy for people just to live that type of life?
Well, many reasons, I believe, because of how we were raised, that shapes us in our responses, in our relationships, and who we are and who we gravitate to and how we respond to people. But mainly because we don't know who we really are. Once I figured out that I was 100% loved and affirmed for who I am, not for what I do. We are all wanting to do, get to this level, be this personality, be that person. But if you would ever just understand who you are, I get to preaching on this one. I mean, once you find out who you are, you will do everything that you're supposed to do. But see, we got it backwards. We all try to do, but never know who we are. That's why we keep failing in what we do. If you would ever be so sure of who you are, you will do everything that you're supposed to do.
Amen to that. The Most Beautiful Disaster, Hope Carpenter. Now, what's one book that you feel has really helped you throughout your healing, process?
Wow, I have so many. Number one, I was not a reader at all before this. Now, I loved magazines. I had every issue of Who Wore It Best. Look how much that did for me. But in 2013, I started out, I just devour books now. I love books. I have probably 10 on my desk right now that I just read through and at the same time. But in my journey, Boundaries, Henry Cloud, major book. Transforming the Inner Man was probably the most amazing book I've ever read by John Sanford, Sanford. Literally changed my life. I read that book and I was so mad because I've been raised in church and I'm like, why has no one ever told me these things? Why has no one ever preached about this or taught about this? Transforming the Inner Man. And today I have to give a shout out to Oprah because she's just written a book called What Happened to You? We want to ask people why you did what you did. And she's written a book, What Happened? And her whole premise is instead of saying, why did you do what you did? We need to be asking the question, what happened to you? Because what happened to you causes you to do what you did. Woo! Preach, wow. Oprah.
Yes, that is such a good point. And yeah, it's I love that. Instead of why the addiction, it's why the pain, right? And it just,
yes.
I feel you're part of something very beautiful. Now, Hope, this is the last segment and it's called Fill It In. So it's a nice, fun one. I'm going to give you a sentence and you just fill in the blank, okay?
Goodness, I'm terrible at these.
Oh, no, you're not.
Okay.
Let's go. So a great home begins with
fun.
Being a great friend starts with
honesty.
I am very proud of
myself.
My biggest turnoff in a relationship is
arrogance.
Humans have an incredible ability to
hurt people. Yeah.
Wow. Can you go into that for just 2 seconds?
It's our nature. We are born into sin and we are selfish. We're prideful. We're arrogant in our nature. And until we have a new nature, and then until we renew our mind, man, just because we ask Jesus into our heart, the only thing that changed is that our spirit man came to life. Our body can still do the same things, and our soul, which is our mind, still thinks and remembers and acts and responds the same. That's why we have to renew our mind. The Bible says, renew your mind. Wash it with the soap of the word. Listen, we know more about Netflix than we do about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it is a shame, and we're stuck and we're living there. That's why we hurt each other, even in the church, because we don't have a renewed mind.
Wow, that was the best answer I've ever received. Incredible. Now, your last question, it's a nice, fun one. So, Hope, this is your last meal on earth before you go up to heaven, your very last meal, and you can have absolutely anything on that plate. Let's go. What are you having?
I am having a fried seafood platter with crinkle cut French fries. I'm having shrimp, oysters, scallops, and fish all fried because that's the way I like it. And every time we go to a restaurant, my husband is such a health nut. He'll go, "No, don't order the fried platter." And I'm sitting there going, "I want the fried platter." And I'm like, when they come to take my order, I'm like, "I'll take the broiled platter." So yes, my last meal is going to be a fried seafood platter.
That's actually one of my favorite, I call them celebration meals, because if you're telling yourself, oh, it's a cheat meal, you already psychologically feel bad about it. And you're like, shaming yourself. But I love, some people call it fish and chips or whatnot.
Yes.
Fried fish and some French fries.
So
what gets better than that? Like, are you kidding me?
Nothing.
Listen, you might not like this, but literally I just had, before this interview, I had a can of sardines. I eat almost like your husband, probably very health conscious.
Yes.
I just had wild caught sardines and like maybe 6 oysters with some fermented cabbage, which was sauerkraut basically. So that was my meal. But you know what? Hope, the whole time I wish it was fried and batter with some French, so yeah, we're on the same page. Hope Carpenter.
We'll do a celebration meal in my honor.
I'll send you a picture doing that.
Yes,
and listen,
thanks.
this interview with you deserves a million celebration meals. So thank you so much. I mean it. Thank you so much for writing that book, for living the life that you live, and you're going to continue to do great stuff. And that's one of my favorite things about this show is, yes, you're influential, and yes, you have a presence, a public figure, but you're preaching the right stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because you live, because you do what you do, and you're human, and your book shows you. Yeah. I'm human.
Yeah.
But I'm trying.
Yeah.
And literally, I'm trying to do so much good. I'm trying to, promote the word of God, and also bring it down to the earthly level where everybody sees, oh, she's a real one. You know what I mean? And that's what I got from you since I was put on to you. And today you just went above and beyond. So Hope, that's the end of the interview. Thank you so much. People are going to be buying this book, The Most Beautiful Disaster, How God Makes Miracles Out of Our Mistakes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just the title. Wait up one more time. The Most Beautiful Disaster, How God Makes Miracles Out of Our Mistakes. Listen, if there's nothing more relatable than that, help me out, because I haven't read a title like that. So Hope, great job. And I'm very proud of you and what you're doing. And whenever you come out with your other book, because this one's going to do so well, and then you're going to, everybody's going to be saying, hey, we need you to release more books, come back on this show whenever you want. Hope, you have been fantastic.
Bless you.
All right, Hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the interview's done. Hope, listen, you crushed it. That was so good. It was effortless for you. We are. And again, because you speak my language, you know what I mean? Yeah. You speak my language. I'm also a Christian too, but my favorite Christians are those who understand that they're also a human being as well. Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And the fact that you not only have the word of God, but you also have, I don't want to call it science, but it's just, you have so much intellect that it helps people receive your message tenfold because they see you're both.
Well, I want to be relatable, not just to church people, but to people, because everybody has pain. Everybody has pain. And I believe literally with all my heart that this book, if I could get it in the hands of every human, and I've talked to people who are like, well, I'm not a Christian. I'm like, well, skip the Bible verses. I tell them, I say, skip the Bible verses if you're not a Christian, but read the book, because it will bring you, it is a pathway to healing. It truly was my path of my healing journey. And I believe it is an answer. And for $22, most people have to go to counseling for a year at $175 a pop to get the information that's in this book. I just want to get it in the hands of so many people because I know it'll help them.
You're going through it the right way. And then now, whenever I'm going on interviews or speaking to other people, I'm going to be name dropping you and using your title, because it's people read the same stuff over and over and over.
Yeah.
Poor Dad, Rich Dad, the
Yeah,
48
yeah.
Laws of Power. It's all about how can I become more rich? And it's just like, shut up with all that stuff. Read a book that's like coming from somebody who literally was at their lowest and they're on the bounce back. And like, and she even said, this is a daily consistent thing. You got to renew your mind all the time. It's not like, oh, now I'm the Hope Carpenter. I want to be okay. Now I can finish everything. Like now I don't have to work anymore. No, you're constantly working. And even when you do these interviews and, you know, and you're going to continue and you're just going to grow in popularity. So get ready for having this camera and all these people interviewing you. Get ready for all of it. But one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. How do you decompress? You know, outside of reading the Bible and outside of being in church, what do you do to go, this is my time and I feel good when I do this?
Well, I love, because I feel like Ron and I lost a lot of time. He and I will take 2 or 3 days here and there, usually once a month. We'll go somewhere for like 2 or 3 days, even if it's to drive an hour to Monterey, because, you know, we're in California half the month and South Carolina half the month. So we'll go spend 2 days somewhere. And I love, love, love just being with him. But I'm going to tell you something that is so boring that gives me more life than anything is being by myself for 2 or 3 days in pajamas, reading, just quiet, no television on, just being able to go to bed when I want to go to bed. And that does not happen maybe twice a year.